before I deliver the message from my minister, and I think it has been well stated the reasons that I am here to represent him. It will be ideal for me, Program Director Mamqina Mhlope, our Vice Chancellor, Professor Xoliso Mtose, Deputy Vice Chancellors, Deans, as well as executives from the University of Zululand. As a university that has got a very rich history, very, very powerful work that it has done in producing some of the intellectuals we didn't think will come out of a university branded as Black University. Chief executives of entities here present, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe for starters, as I greet you this evening, Professor Kwesipra, I must start by again passing our apology for the minister's inability to join you this evening. It was circumstances beyond his control. Hence, he had to then delegate that I am here. When I'm a Pogo won the World Cup for the first time, people said that one of the reasons is that they were speaking Afrikaans, and the Western countries could not understand them, so they could beat them just using the power of language. Word movements they were communicating to do. In the recent, again, triumphant return from Japan when they won a World Cup again as Mapogo. They said that Abo Mampimpi, they had brought a dimension of language that also their opponents could not understand. So, what it is that is in language and the power of language, and why the colonizers were so afraid of culture and language of indigenous people. I think the answer lies more in what Ngugi Waithiongo once said. When he said while he was in prison, he was surprised why he's being imprisoned for working in an African language. But when he was working in an English language, he was not imprisoned. He then realized at that time while in prison, the power between the language and the use of power itself and the meaning of power. So we really appreciate, Professor, what you have said, but in your statement, you touched a raw nerve about geography and people. And in this message of the minister, I think there is an answer there about the unity of Africans. When the father of African unity, first president of Democratic President of Ghana said, I am not African because I was born in Africa. I am African because Africa was born in me. Close quote. In other words, your connectedness to your own continent and your geographic space is crucial. Because in one way or the other, the cultures that you learn and the heritage that get bestowed on you is mainly based on the environment where you were born. And maybe that's why we call ourselves Africans. Because there is power in connecting yourself to who you are So I would like to then start with the message very briefly and say that I extend my warmest greetings to all of you present here. I'm glad that we can still gather here under the conditions that are extremely difficult in our country and the world, and that is the problem of COVID-19 pandemic. So we meet under quite different circumstances. This has been an important week for us and recognize the leadership role of the illustrious leaders and founders who demonstrated to Africans throughout the globe and to the world at large that Africa is the first continent to seek unity. Indeed, we are able to understand who we are as we seek to create a better Africa and a better world, armed with the insights of those who have come before us. Even now, their vision inspires us and guides us as we need to encourage true unity in the face of an all-consuming pandemic and the economic realities that such an occurrence has enforced upon us. I think it's crucial to understand that unity is a source of survival, but also it shapes our thinking about our destiny as a nation. One of the key powerful tools that the colonizers used was to divide Africans and superimpose ideology of a better Africa and African than the other. And this, you cannot look at it from very far to bring it home when slavery took its root in Africa. You'll understand that those who were the hewers of wood then, who were the cotton farm workers, were supervised by the so-called house slave. But it was an African slave enslaving another one, worse than the master himself or herself. It was a divide and rule to ensure that Africans can unite, because the power of unity would have brought them to realize the need to fight a common enemy and to liberate themselves even quicker. So it is important that the vision of our founding fathers of African unity is understood in that context, and that we must pursue it even today and stay away from xenophobia or Afrophobia, which becomes another shackle on our legs to move forward, because those who are colonizers and were colonizers before, and they still believe in superiority of a race rather than humanity, they decide to use that divide and rule. So African fathers, founding fathers of our unity, made these contributions as stepping stones in the service of a greater humanity, and have laid the foundations for our freedom, and demand of us that we too have a humanizing vocation. From their example, we need to seek inspiration and provide hope in the present, and bring this accumulation of knowledge and history to bear upon us as we fight the scourge and seek to save the people of our country, our continent, and the world. It is also an important year for us as South Africans. This is the 60th anniversary of Baba Nkosi Albert Luthuli, who was the first to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize as an African. To quote in 1961 on his speech on the 10th of December, I quote, "It is an honor for the peace-loving people of the entire world and an encouragement for us all to redouble our efforts in this struggle for peace and friendship. Indeed, as we do need in this world of ours at the present moment, peace and friendship. These are becoming very rare commodities in the world. For my part, I am deeply conscious of the added responsibility which this award entails. I have the feeling that I have been made answerable to for the future of the people of South Africa. For if there is no peace for the majority of them, there is no peace for anyone, close quote. It is mainly, I believe, African leadership that can speak so profoundly and with such certainty of their roles in relation to, but not only the present, but to the future. The need to future-proof ourselves even today as we find ourselves in the midst of a pandemic and in a situation where, although we have made strides, much must still be done. It is important. Indeed, this year also marks the 150th anniversary of the birth of one of South Africa's most remarkable and pioneering leaders, Mama Charlotte Manyama-Qeke. We recognize and pay tribute to the first black South African woman to obtain a science degree. She was a delegate to the African National Congress's founding conference in 1912 and was a founder of the Bantu Women's League, a forerunner of the today's ANC Women's League. She challenged the status quo. She challenged patriarchy. She challenged customs that were negative and that were destructive in subjugating women. You must remember, during those times of colonialism, before South Africa suffered what we call colonialism of a special kind, apartheid, that African women in particular were suffering a double jeopardy from their own customs and cultures, as well as from the colonialist exploitation and subjugation. So Mama Maqede made an exceptional contribution to the struggle for the liberation of women in South Africa and challenged contemporary attitudes about the place of women in politics, society, and the economy. She was part of a generation who truly discovered their mission, and she did so alongside other intellectuals of her ilk. We further welcome the African Union theme for 2021-2022 as the year for arts, culture, and heritage. Levers for building the Africa we want. This adoption by African Union is again a greater symbol of realizing that culture, heritage, is a powerful tool for development. Our year-long program of activities in support of this rallying call and the importance of the cultural creative industries is the attainment of Agenda 2063 objectives. Particularly, there are clear aspirations that relate to culture. Such is our times that it requires of us to be inventive, to look at reality with new eyes, and to be re-energized, to lead in this new chapter for the world and for our country. Collectively, the past with its heroic battles and our efforts to transform our society in the present have set out for us on this path things that must bring into the world a new person. If I quote what Paulo Freire had said, open quote, this new being, no longer oppressor, no longer oppressed, but human in the process of achieving freedom, close quote. as Professor Kwesi shares his thoughts with us today, we would really like to thank him for his gracious acceptance to be here. And in doing this, indeed, he has been able to assist us to remind us about the power of language. During my time at primary school, where we didn't have grades then, but you know how the colonizer used to shape our minds about our identity. Even in school, I remember very well that I found myself in a situation where I would be reported for speaking my language. There would be a prefect who will write you down and say to you, you have spoken your language. They give their names to the teacher, and you get punished because we thought you are imbuing a sense of ability to be intellectually clever than others if you speak English. But we were suppressing, becoming our own oppressors, destroying the sense of pride from ourselves, being children, taught to be spies among ourselves for speaking our own language. When you read the book by Ngoke Waithong, one of the things that he raises, the great African writer, is that same thing was happening in Kenya. A teacher will give you a particular ticket. As soon as you speak your language, they give you the ticket. The other learner hears the other one speaks his language or her language, they give that ticket. When it is time to get out of school, they say, where is the ticket? Then the last person who got that ticket must say, where did I get it? Then the whole chain, the other child says, I got it from you, that from you. Then all those children are now being staged at the assembly, having broken their rules. Why? Punished for speaking their language. Why would a colonizer be so afraid of a language? There is power in the language because it's about your identity. It makes sure that you understand the world better. Your perspective of life is shaped by what is the content of language. So I agree with you, Professor, that we must do more to empower the use of our languages. And as a Director General responsible for pioneering that policy, I think you have challenged me even more to go back and see that the promotion of African or previously disadvantaged languages Act that was published in 2012 is not being used. Our people go to our offices, they are forced to speak English. It doesn't matter whether the office of government is in rural area or not. So we are inflicting pain by discarding our own culture, our own heritage, our own language. The founders of African unity, that's not what they wanted. So we are happy that African Union has adopted Professor the issue of the Swahili as a foundation to start allowing Africans to communicate among themselves. Every country must start teaching that language so that we can relate to one another. We are in the United Nations, our leaders speak English. But when Putin speaks, he speaks Russian. When Xi speaks, the Chinese leader speaks Chinese. Nobody laughs. But Africans laugh among themselves. Yet did you hear him? He can't even finish a good grammatical sentence. So liberation of the mind is required for us to be able to be truly Africans, proud of our own identity. Namanje nje ndikhuluma isingisi ngaze ngaqeda. Inkinga le. Ngoba nje nilana ngiphakathi impela phakathi kwaZulu kodwa ngikhuluma isilungu ngize ngiqede ngoba ngiyazi khona abalalela abangasazi isiZulu. So when we talk about the power of language, uyabona nje ukuthi sisalimele kakhulu. Asikwazi nokukhuluma sisodwa nje. Sisonke sibaningi kangaka. All we are thinking about is, hey, Lisa is gonna feel excluded. Yeah. It's a problem. We must change the mindset. Abantwana bethu bafeel ukuthi ngum-African and it's not a mistake. Bazokwenza kanjani lokho? Bazokwenza ukuthi ubone le brighter future esho umama ucela enhloko ukuthi umeya njalo nje sezohamba yogeza ekuseni uyayicabanga le ndaba athi madoda uma ngakaboni ikusasa eli bright religion emehlweni omntwana wami then konke kwenza actually. So all I'm saying is that for this lecture of today by Professor Kwesi, we really had wonderful deliberations on the question of language, social and economic development, as well as decolonization. So in conclusion, as Minister concludes, as I speak on behalf of Minister Mkhize, I must say, I am reminded of the ways of Ngugi wa Thiong'o in an essay in his book, Homecoming, where he says that, open quote, political and economic liberation are the essential condition for cultural liberation, for the true release of a people's creative spirit and imagination. It is when people are involved in the active work of destroying an inhibitive social structure and building a new one that they begin to see themselves. They are born again. Close quote. Thank you very much.